It is a well-known fact in many medical type communities as well as other communities that to reach the point of sleep, an individual must first get to a point of relaxation. And some of those mechanisms for relaxation could be as simple as preparing yourself to go to bed by changing your wardrobe and getting into a pair of pajamas. And once you get into that preparation for relaxation, going to bed, laying down in bed, relaxing your mind, and carrying yourself down into a sleep type mode where rest actually takes place. And while you're truly sleeping and you're truly resting, your body naturally performs a diagnostic check on your body. Now, when you are deprived of those things, deprived of getting into the relaxation mode, like wearing a pair of pajamas and preparing yourself to lay down in a nice, comfortable bed, where you can where you can thus stretch out and relieve your mind of the pressures of the day and reach the mode that is called sleep, where you can completely rest and de-stress and allow your body to naturally conduct that test. That is in itself something that I would consider a peace. So, if throughout your life you were allowed to do these things, and then because of some mishap that happened in your life, all of a sudden all those things were stripped away from you, and you were no longer allowed to do those things, and then you became, like me and my daughter, homeless, that is abuse. Because if we once had those stagings of what would be considered a normal life, to lower us below other people is in itself inhumane treatment, okay? So I often, since I don't have a bed and I cannot always afford a hotel, I have to shut my body down at certain intervals, and I often do this late in the evening, and my body never sleeps, and I have not received regular, consistent, real sleep in years since 2015. And because of that, and the well-known fact that this is the truth, people often recategorize others that they have placed in these situations as people with mental illness, when that is not the case, because you try living 6 or more years without real solid sleep on a regular basis and see how well you act and behave in any society, especially if you've already experienced and you know this to be true, that all individuals require sleep. So I often become alert after I do nod off a little bit between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. And one recent alert stage during those hours, I woke up and I found sitting on my phone on YouTube was a video about Leonard Pelitier. in the Pine Ridge Reservation. Well, my mind immediately went to not only South Dakota, but the Pine Ridge Cemetery in Buffalo on Genesee Street. And then my mind went to the Pines. And so I traveled in my thought process to my childhood, where we lived in this apartment complex, and the people that lived next door to us in a house, their last name was Pelitier. And they had a son, and he and I, his name was CeCe, or they called him CeCe. We used to channel each other, channel each other in between the walls. Their house and where I lived, the distance between was less than 2 feet. So without saying a word, we would channel each other. And so he'd be sitting in his house and I'd be sitting in the apartment, and then we would channel each other. And that's how we became friends. He would say, are you hungry? And I would say, yeah. And he'd say, meet me at the gate. And so I'd meet him at the gate, and it was just a small little courtyard, if you will, that was on the apartment side of the properties. And so he would carry out 2 plates. Empty plate on the bottom of a fully loaded food plate, and he'd have 2 forks. And then he'd take the bottom plate out, put it in my hands, shave off half the food that he carried on the top plate onto my plate, and then pass me a fork. And then we would never really say much, but just sit there and eat together. Well, we, through other people's observations, we were labeled as the devil's childs, because we hardly ever said a word to each other, but we always, we were friends. And so we ended up getting put under the Catholic cloth for that. And shortly after that, I think they started, running records in reverse and all this other shit because of that. What they were finding out about us, people like us. And so this morning I wake up, and there on my phone, not that I wake up, I just become alert. So on my phone there is the Mount Morris Fire Department. And at first glance I was like, this can't be Mount Morris, New York. And so I hit the contact page, and sure enough, it's Mount Morris, New York. And their contact person is Bill D'Angelo. I go, this can't be Bill D'Angelo that owns Martin's Funeral Parlor in Mount Morris, New York, where they coordinated all the death-like services, carrying my son's name around without my authorization, my permission, or my consent. And so I flip over to his page, and sure enough, it is. And then my mind sits there, and I go, how is it not a conflict of interest that this guy he's privately held 2 funeral homes. He's like in deep with these fire departments. And how is that not a conflict of interest where they have influence over death? The orchestration of death. And so while that question sits in my mind, I decide to take a ride to Rochester, because I haven't heard from my daughter in a few days, Amanda. We're both homeless. She's sleep deprived too, just like I am. And we often do things to punish ourselves for being alive. Like I smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, just hoping my angioedema shuts my system right the hell down. I'm sure she does a few things on her side too, hoping the same thing since we have no life. There's nothing to look forward to, so why carry on? And so I ride around. I can't find her anywhere. She's not answering her phone. I haven't heard from her in days now. And, well, Rochester, New York is a cruddy little place, too. You know, their history of Arthur Shawcross and, you know, their murder rates and everything. And, you know, pushing my daughter into the realms of homelessness just to boost yourselves up and make yourselves feel oh so powerful like Oz doesn't really sit well with me. So I think I'm gonna go sit and see if I can channel CeCe and see where it gets me.